Good news, Seattle hockey fans. There is a new broadcast partner, and there are direct ties to this very podcast. That's right, Locked On Kraken. I'll tell you more coming up on today's episode.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, brought to you, of course, by the Locked On Podcast Network, which is a TEGNA affiliate or a TEGNA property, technically. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at Monopoly Go. I know a lot of you, like myself, are competitive and have a competitive side. And it is a big and as a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on a classic Monopoly is somewhere where you can let those competitive juices fly. Join your friends and download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. Welcome again to Locked On Kraken. I'm your host, Erica L. Ayala. And yes, Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is a part of TEGNA. And why am I mentioning that? Because TEGNA is our new broadcast home for the Seattle Kraken. And if you've been listening to the show, then you know that the Seattle Kraken have been in conversation, per Jeff Baker, about trying to find a better regional streaming platform. There's a really interesting story in a minute that I'm going to get into. Or actually, we've already talked about a story. I'm going to give you the update from Jeff's reporting regarding the regional streaming deals, because I know a lot of people had questions about the Mariners. But here's the press release that came out earlier today. The Seattle Kraken announced new multi-year agreements with TEGNA and Prime Video to offer more options for fans to watch their games throughout the Pacific Northwest. Quote, starting next season, TEGNA stations King 5 and Kong. I always love that y'all have King and Kong, which is amazing, in Seattle, will broadcast all non-nationally televised games, more than 70 in total, for free over the air. King 5 becomes the official television partner of the Seattle Kraken, taking fans behind the scenes with exclusive Kraken coverage led by sport director Paul Sylvie. In addition, Prime Video will stream all non-nationally televised games for Prime members in Washington, Oregon, and Alaska, which will include preseason, regular season, and the first round of the playoffs. The Kraken are the first NHL team to partner directly with a streamer. Sam Holloway from the Seattle Kraken has been a terrific partner for us. We have appreciated their support as we determined our broadcast plans moving forward. Today's announcement is a game changer for our fans. Our goal is to increase the ways they can watch our games, whether they're cheering us on at home or on the go. To have both TEGNA and Prime Video as trusted partners is a dream come true. I can't wait for more Kraken fans to fall in love with I can't wait for more fans, to fall in love with Kraken hockey. And this is from Dave Lugie, president and CEO of TEGNA. Our collaboration with the Seattle Kraken marks a significant milestone in our commitment to celebrating the essence of local sports on local broadcast television. We look forward to bringing every thrilling moment of Kraken hockey to all viewers in the Pacific Northwest as we build on our long-standing commitment to the region. Seattle Kraken hockey is synonymous with the Pacific Northwest, and we're thrilled to bring Prime members in Washington, Oregon, and Alaska access to games on Prime Video. That's Charlie Neiman, head of sports partnerships at Prime Video. Live Kraken games add to our growing selection of premium live sports and deliver additional value for Prime members through the Kraken home footprint. And here is the part, at least if you were like me, that I found very intriguing as a Seattle Kraken fan and as a fan of the Seattle Kraken broadcast team. John Forslund, JT Brown, Eddie Olczyk, Allison Lucan, friend of the podcast, that's not in the press release, and Nick Olchek will continue broadcasting the games next season. So that's amazing. And I bet you're wondering about Piper Shaw. Now, Piper is not explicitly mentioned here. I do believe that Piper has also done a little bit of crossover for um, the Mariners, but this is where we get a little more information from Jeff Baker, who has been following this story. We've talked about this story time and time again. So, in Jeff's piece, it's entitled Kraken Leaving Root Sports for New TV and Streaming Deals. He's talking about, again, the kind of the death of, or the slow death of, the regional model. He's talked about that a lot. We talked on this show about how he was actually on a podcast, really broke that down in a really interesting way. He also talks about sorry, I saw a video of like Chris Drieger's look at I think it was a Decord save. Anyway, I got distracted. It's such a great moment. Anyway, here's what Jeff reported in addition to what I just read in the press release. The team will keep play-by-play man John Forsland, color analyst Eddie Olchek, and JT Brown. And additional on-air personalities, Nick Olchek and Allison Lucan, will all be in place, as are all Kraken employees, while exploring future options with Root Sports game reporter Piper Shaw. He also goes on to say that Forsland was rumored as a candidate for the Boston Bruins broadcasting vacancy. But here's the quote Jeff Baker puts in his article. "I'm with the Seattle Kraken," Forsland said. "This is my dream job. I work in the National Hockey League. I work for the Seattle Kraken, and I get to do national games. How much bigger a dream can I get?" So it seems like, and that's what I kind of alluded to with Piper. I know that she, from my understanding, at least, worked most directly or maybe most expansively with Root Sports, because she also has done some things for the Mariners. So I hope that we get the full gang back. I'm so grateful that the majority of our team is back. To me, Piper is a huge part of that. I think she's been fantastic. I don't know what her terms are as far as how do I want to say this? My understanding is that some people on the broadcast team, their contract was going to be up. And again, with all of this conversation with Jeff Baker, it seemed like this broadcast deal could potentially change some things in the landscape. I don't know what Piper's contract is, or if she has time remaining on her Root Sports contract. I don't exactly know if she was only contracted for Seattle Kraken, because again, she's done some other things. So, that could impact what we see regarding Piper. If Root Sports wants to keep Piper, they might have to come up with a deal where she can also work on the King and Kong, aka TEGNA. King Kong. So funny to me. On the TEGNA broadcast and or the Prime broadcast. But either way, I don't know exactly how this is going to impact those of us like myself who, for the majority of the season, are not in Seattle. But it seems that this is really great for local fans in the Pacific Northwest. So Jeff has been writing about this. I haven't always agreed with everything Jeff has been saying. I also come from a city, New York, where the regional sports model I mean, I don't honestly know how effective MSG or the Yes Network are, but they seem to be pretty effective. Liberty games have been on there. We're starting to see Gotham FC games in the NWSL on there. The PWHL has games on MSG. So I come from an area of the country where I was raised and where I became a sports fan, where the regional model is still extremely strong. And New York sports radio is like cream of the crop. We actually had Linda Kahn on the show, you might remember, friend of the podcast, and she talked about that. She talked about coming up in New York City radio. So, I guess I don't have a feel exactly for how things are other places, but I think also what Jeff has been saying, either on podcasts or writing for the Seattle Times, is that this is also a moving landscape. So TEGNA, who owns the Locked On podcast network, we had a buyout a couple of years ago, like maybe two exactly. I don't remember. I'm going to do some more recon on that, but I think it's really cool that the Seattle Kraken are part of the family. I do know that sometimes you can read slash King 5 and Kong will link Locked On episodes to some of their articles. And that's pretty cool too. So I don't know exactly what this will look like. I also know that Tegna is a partner for the Indiana Fever. And for those who don't know, the Indiana Fever play in the WNBA, and for the second year in a row, they got the number one pick. And the number one pick for this year just happened to be, I don't know, you might have heard of someone called Caitlin Clark. And so that's pretty cool too, that we have WNBA in the family, so to speak, when it comes to Tegna. So the Seattle Kraken and this woman right here, if I can get the overlay, and yes, I'm going to humble brag for a hot second if I can get the overlay to actually work. But we have Caitlin Clark on our airwaves. I'm contributing to CBS Sports, and I got to interview Caitlin Clark and a lot of the other draft picks live on draft day, and it was awesome. So I can't get the overlay up, but check my socials. It's up there. It's pretty cool to be part of such a historic draft class. Soup to nuts, I really think this is going to be a draft class that we say we're game changers. Not the pioneers, I wouldn't say, but game changers. I do think there's a difference. Anyway, coming up on Locked On Kraken, we're going to hear from the one and only Tad O'Had, who I did not realize is a Washington native. He talks in our next two segments, you'll hear me and Tad in a phone conversation. Apologies in advance. You might hear a little background noise on my end. I was food shopping when we were able to connect. But Tad, again, great hockey mind. The Mavericks are in to round 2 and they'll have some rest. And that's something that I actually talk with Tad about. Is the rest a good thing? Is it a bad thing? So we'll get into that and more coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. This is your Thursday episode of Locked On Kraken, and it is brought to you, as I mentioned at the top of the show, by our friends at Monopoly Go. Listen, everyone's got a little bit of a competitive streak, competitive edge. I know I certainly do. And what I love is that Monopoly is a game where you really bring out that competitive streak. But now there is a digital spin, an app that takes that classic Monopoly game and it makes it even better, to be honest. So it's been downloaded over 150 million times. Again, a great twist on Monopoly. You play not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. The best part is, of course, having bragging rights, especially when playing against your friends. You can also charge them rent on iconic properties, just like in classic Monopoly. You can also heist their vaults of riches for yourself. And the leaderboard, of course, is going to show you who is the biggest Monopoly tycoon. So if you have a competitive side, make sure you download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. So get in the game and join your friends. Don't forget, download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or on Google Play. Thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. And I want to remind you that you can watch our free 24/7 sports streaming channel that is programmed for you every day and bringing you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, news, and all streaming 24/7 on YouTube or for free on the Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And again, welcome now, Seattle hockey fans, to the TEGNA family. This is a TEGNA property, Locked On Kraken, as a part of, as I just mentioned, the Locked On Podcast Network. So we're super excited to see what that's going to bring. I want to shift gears here now because our very own affiliate, Kansas City Mavericks, are going to gear up for round 2 of the playoffs. They have a little time off, though. They will take on either Idaho or the Americans. The Americans. It's very patriotic. I forget what they actually are called these days, but anyway, actually a former or the Allen Americans, that's what it is. The Allen Americans in Allen, Texas, who used to be our affiliate. And then we got with Kansas City. So anyway, here is Tad O'Had, general manager and head coach of the Kansas City Mavericks, talking about the win, some of the players that we won't see, at least in game 1 of the series, but also what the team is going to do while they have about a week off. So here's a conversation. It's going to be audio for those watching on YouTube. Hi, YouTubers. It's going to be audio, but I did the overlays again for you. So without further ado, part 1 of my conversation with Tad O'Had. Taking some time out.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, congrats on being able to close out the series with Tulsa. Why don't we start with just your overall thoughts on how the team was able to perform throughout the series?
You know what? I thought the team showed a lot of resiliency. Those were all 4 tight games. There were situations in all of the games that really came down to whether it be a penalty kill, a power play, even a tight third period. I liked how the guys had poise under pressure. Overall, our special teams was very impressive. We went 100% on the PK, 25% on the power play, a combined 125% overall. Very pleased with that. And I thought our goaltending was exceptional. And I thought our goaltending has been exceptional all year, but particularly both of those men splitting 2 games each, I thought they were true.
It was, we talked about routine for the guys, and you'll have a few days off at least before the next series here. What's the balance between keeping them fresh as far as, hockey sharp, but also getting their bodies the rest they need?
Yeah, exactly. There's a fine balance, and people always talk about, is it too much time off or not enough? And, the fact of the matter is, I think every coach would always take more time off to be able to rest than to be able to go from like a game 7 right into it. There are benefits to both, but like in most things in life, it's how you perceive it and what you want to take from it. And so what we've done here is we've given the guys, we got back at about 3:00 in the morning on what would be Tuesday morning. We gave the guys off Tuesday, gave them off Wednesday. We will practice Thursday, Friday, Saturday, give them off Sunday, then practice Monday, Tuesday, give them off Wednesday, practice Thursday, Friday, and then we go into game 1 and 2 next Saturday and Sunday. And so first and foremost, we got to get the guys away from the rink for a couple of days, get them to just kind of decompress and just, get their mind away from hockey. 2, we'll come back here. We'll begin to really work on, 1, making sure that just, we're clicking, we've got good consistency. We're getting good work in practice. It's a bit of a challenge, you know what it is. And we don't know who our opponent is, but that's okay. We played Idaho a lot this year. We played, Allen a lot. And really our focus is the root of our principles of play, what we need to do to be successful. So we'll have some healthy conversations there. We will do some situational gameplay to make sure that we're keeping up kind of that full game, mode, whether it be some modified scrimmages, special teams, 6-on-5, a variety of different things to keep us sharp. And then just make sure the guys are getting their treatment and plenty of rest and taking care of themselves.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, kind of on that note, you have some days off, but, is there anyone that, you think maybe because of a lingering injury or just how they've been playing that, you're going to keep a little bit more of an eye on as far as situational to have them be, as you said, strong come game time?
So Max and Dreya still has to serve 1 game, suspension. And so our focus is really just keeping him up to game reps and everything. He is so important to this roster. And so we want to keep that. I would say there's this time of year, no one's 100%. There's just lingering injuries, bruises, things like that. So I tell you what, our athletic training staff does a heck of a job. And so they'll continue to get the guys treatment. And so it just everybody need to be able to kind of recharge, reload, get ready, for this next series is important. I wouldn't say there's anyone in particular that will benefit more. I think just as a group, we'll all benefit from some time needed to kind of, get feeling 100% again.
Yeah, for sure. Sounds like you're relatively healthy, all things considered.
Yeah, no, I would say we're anytime you're able to get through a series, healthy is a very successful win. Yeah,
for sure. You talked about the suspension. Are for Max that he still has to serve, but are there some players that you think could maybe or that have or will continue to maybe step up in that leadership role, even though, as you said, Max is going to be a key piece for you moving down the line?
Oh, yeah. I think we've had that really throughout this season. That's what's been impressive is if you look at our scoring, although we have several guys at the top of the league in scoring, we've always had different guys step up to the plate this series and through the season. And you saw that with like a McKenna, a Borchardt, 2 guys in particular that I thought were phenomenal in this series, 3 guys. I thought Jake McLaughlin, I thought he was phenomenal defensively. His experience of winning a Kelly Cup with Florida was so important. I was really impressed by him. Jake Cheremko as well, our captain, another guy who won the Kelly Cup with Florida. I thought his experience was exceptional. Mm-hmm. I thought Jeremy McKenna had a really big series. I saw another level of battle from him that I loved. And then like defensively, we had 2 different D-men go in. We had Noel play some games. We had McPherson play games. I was very pleased with how both of those guys responded. And then we had 3 different forwards, from Sullivan go in to Bradley Schoenberg to Casey Carew. So again, kind of speaks to our depth. This is a very deep roster. And that's one of the things that makes it so difficult to play against.
Yeah, for sure. I've heard you talk a few times, Tad, about how, this is being a part of the Seattle Kraken pipeline is just a very different and pleasantly different experience than you've had before. But, that's also led to uh, a decent amount of success for you and the club. So I'm just curious to ask you a little bit from your perspective. What about the last year and a half or so has maybe, I don't want to say changed how you coach or your perspective, but maybe enhanced and given you an opportunity to grow in ways that you've wanted to?
Yeah, it's a really good question. This is what's unique. The ECHL is often referred to as the ever-changing hockey league, and it's because things so often in the ECHL, and sometimes you just clearly don't have control over some of the things that are constantly changing. Now, I've been in this league 11 years, and I've been with a lot of affiliations. And this isn't to speak poorly of any of those affiliations, because I'm very lucky and fortunate to have worked with all those teams. But in those 11 years, you learn one thing, and that communication is vital. The level of communication and support that we have from Seattle and Coachella Valley is the best that I've ever seen in this league. And I am incredibly grateful and fortunate for that. One, I'm from the state of Washington, so I mean, you have no idea how much pride I take in there being professional hockey in Seattle and the Seattle Kraken. When I was growing up playing youth hockey in Washington State, hockey's not a popular sport in Washington, especially where I grew up. So I take a lot of pride, like, Seattle having the Winter Classic, Seattle having the season, making the playoffs, last season, seeing what the Kraken are doing, but also like Coachella Valley, how cool is it last season for them to go to the finals? This season, them having the success that they have. And we are very, very fortunate. One, we get to help develop, their talent in their pipeline. And looking at, the Seattle draft picks, heck, if there's a fan base out there that should be excited for the future, it's the Seattle Kraken fan base. They had two of the top scorers in the Canadian Hockey League last year. They're rich with draft picks. It's exciting, and I'm excited as well because one, we're able to do our very best in developing some of their draft picks and players for Coachella. I think the world of Dan and his staff in Coachella. Got a great relationship with Troy Bodie. We communicate daily. But, Ron Francis calling and wishing us well the other day, I can tell you there's not a lot of NHL GMs that do that with their ECHL team. And that's something that people may not realize. But to have Ron Francis call me, prior to our first playoff game and wish us well, it just goes to show the quality of man he is and just, the people in that organization. Ricky Olchuk, he's been phenomenal. He's come down here several times, to Kansas City. Troy Bodie, Jason Botterill I speak with quite often. He's always paying attention, him and Troy, to what's going on in Kansas City. And I can speak from experience. I've been in this league for 11 years, and that's not the common theme. And so I'm very fortunate and grateful for that. But it's also very special, and it's one of those things that you just have to realize how lucky we are. And we take great pride. Like, myself and my coaching staff, we take great pride. We want to develop and help the players in this pipeline as much as we can. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of it too. And so I'm proud of that.
Today's episode of Locked On Kraken also brought to you by our friends at Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like matching assessments and virtual interviews. Hate waiting? Indeed's US data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. So Indeed knows that when you're growing your business, you have to make every dollar count. And that's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. So visit Indeed.com/locked on to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/locked on. That's Indeed.com/LOCKEDON. Terms and condition apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. But if you need to hire, then you need Indeed. All right, Seattle hockey fans. I mean, I always have a great time chatting with Tad. I thought he might deflect a little when I asked about his growth. I also kind of did put him on the spot. So I think, what I will say is, even if he doesn't exactly hit on the answer, especially when asked to talk about himself, he always gives a fun perspective and insightful. I mean, getting to hear from a general manager and a head coach in the ECHL saying that not every GM in the NHL is calling to wish their ECHL team good luck in their playoff run. And, last year was great for us through and through. We saw all three organizations in the playoffs. This year, 2 out of 3. Maybe arguably, the most important not in the playoffs, but we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. But I just think it's always great to hear from Tad. I'm always grateful that he takes time out, and that he's pretty open with what his thoughts are. We are going to hear more from Tad O'Had tomorrow. On tomorrow's episode, we're also, of course, going to talk about the Coachella Valley Firebirds. But before we close out today's episode, I just want to recap what is going on in recap/preview, I guess, depending on what team you're most interested in. But let's give you some scores. The Boston Bruins are leading their series 2-1 over the Toronto Maple Leafs. They got a 4-2 win over Toronto last night. The Golden Knights were able to hand the Dallas Stars a second loss in their opening round series. They took that game last night 3-1. The Kings, it took overtime, but they did overcome the Edmonton, almost said Tulsa, the Edmonton Oilers. The Kansas City Mavericks took care of the Tulsa Oilers. Anyway, that was a 5-4 overtime score. Today, Thursday night, we have the Panthers and the Lightning. Florida leads that series 2-0. Excuse me. And the Hurricanes will take on the Islanders. The Canes also lead that series over the Isles 2-0. If you want to keep up with what's happening on Friday, we have another 4 games on tap. The Rangers take on the Capitals. The Rangers in command, 2-game lead in that series, 2-0. They're up 2-0. A split series between Vancouver and Nashville. Listen, I am not going to say I'm rooting for anyone, but I root for, or I would like teams that I have a connection to, very roundabout. I'm okay if they do well, because then that means my friends are happy. That's how I feel about the Kings. I'm indifferent about the Capitals, if I can be honest. I know a lot of Caps fans, but it's Washington and I'm from New York, so there's that. But between Vancouver and the Preds, I'm going with the Preds. First of all, the Vancouver Canucks, I have a very specific gripe with them in how they played us season 2, and also they're in the division. I know the Kings are as well, but I'm going to take Blake Bolden over any divisional rivalries, because I'm also not playing in any of these games, so it'll be fine. The Jets and the Avalanche, they have a split series. Game 3 will be on Friday, and also playing on Friday, also a split series, Game 3 between the Oilers and the Kings. That's going to do it for this episode of Locked on Kraken. Now, this is our Thursday proper show. I'm actually uploading 2 episodes today, and the next episode that you will see in your feed, or maybe you already listened to it, I don't know your life, is going to be exit interview focused on Dave Haxtell. And Jeff Baker wrote a really interesting article. I know I did a bonus episode saying, let's stop sensationalizing. He said what he said. And I do agree with that. And there are a few things that Jeff pointed out in his recent article that I didn't realize at first. I still stand on what I said, but I want to talk about it. So the second episode, or the first episode that you listen to, depending on who you are, is going to be about about Dave Haxtell and the choices that Ron Francis and company have to make, including maybe looking in that mirror. But we've been talking about that for a couple of months now. So anyway, be kind to yourself, be kind to one another, hold fast, stay true, and I'll catch you on the next episode, whether that's later today or tomorrow. Peace out, everybody.